You are listening to Let's Talk Trio on podcasts. Keep up with the latest episodes by downloading the Podbean app or stream episodes via our social media accounts. Search for Let's Talk Trio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This episode is sponsored by Student Access. Student Access, the leader in Trio software. Student Access is an online database solution that allows Trio programs to track their students' information, connect with students by text messages, streamline the APR, and work from anywhere, all online, with automatic updates for changes from the Department of Education. Their technical support team includes former Trio staff and has over 50 years of combined experience working with Trio. Make it easier to focus on your priority, the students. For more information and to request a free demo, visit their website at www.studentaccess.com or call them toll-free at 1-800-801-1232. That website again is www.studentaccess.com or 1-800-801-1232. Be sure to share your favorite episodes on your social media by tapping that share button. This is a great way to support the podcast. Now here's your host, Juan Rivas.
Thank you, Amelia, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Trio. I am your host, Juan Rivas. In today's episode, we have the Executive Director of Oregon Trio, Matt Bisek. Matt is in the podcast to talk about how he got involved in the state initiative to form a Trio nonprofit organization at the state level. Matt is also a former Trio staff member and has a educational journey and career journey to share. So coming up in just a bit, Matt Bisek. A huge thanks to our sponsors, Angelica Villalpando, Rosario Riley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jamie Motley, Angelica Valdez, Jaded Electronics, TrioJoblist.com, and Student Access. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can be a sponsor of the podcast. Head on over to Patreon and search for Let's Talk Trio. Choose one of 4 patron levels. You can support this podcast for as little as $1 a month. $1 a month goes a long way in supporting this podcast. If you own a business and would like to run an ad on our podcast, send us a message and we can work out the details. You can also become a supporter of the podcast with a one-time donation to our podcast PayPal account. Search for our handle at Let's Talk Trio, all together. Any amount is truly appreciated. If you would like to nominate a participant, staff, or alumni to be on the podcast, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. Again, a great episode featuring Matt Bisek from the Oregon Trio Association. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi, Trio Nation. Our next guest on the Let's Talk Trio podcast began working for Trio programs in the Upward Bound and Educational Talent Search programs at Clatsop Community College in 2015 as an advisor. He served as the treasurer of the Oregon Trio Association 501c3 nonprofit from 2018 to 2021 before taking on the position of executive director in September of 2021. Currently, they serve as the Northwest Association of Education Opportunity Programs and Council for Opportunity Education, COE, on both boards. He also serves on the board of directors for the University of St. Francis Alumni Association in Joliet, Illinois. He is a graduate of University of St. Francis with a double major in business and obtained a master's in educational leadership and administration from Concordia University in Portland. Our guest is passionate about creating opportunities and removing barriers from first-generation and low-income students to pursue post-secondary education. He strives to grow the State Trio Association model to be a conduit between practitioners who work directly with students and those organizations and foundations that have resources and opportunities available to positively impact students' lives. In his free time, our guest enjoys listening to podcasts, watching the NBA, and hanging with his kids. Welcome to the podcast, Matt Bisek. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me, Juan. It's wonderful to be here.
first of all, it's such a huge honor to have you on here. I know we've been trying to coordinate our schedules to get you on, and you're honestly the first person from Oregon that I got to have on the Let's Talk Trio podcast.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, you initially had reached out because you are profiling all these alum and trying to get every state. And I love all the work you do and the way you show kind of stories and all the Trio alum. So it's an honor to kind of be profiled on here and kind of represent Oregon for the first time.
Awesome. We're super glad to have you. How are things in Oregon?
Things are awesome. Like I didn't grow up here initially. We'll probably get into that, but doing this kind of work in education for underrepresented populations in a state that's insanely liberal and will just throw themselves out there has been a blessing, as we'll kind of get into, and it's led to kind of the career I have now. So it's a cool place to be. And this time of year, things just get so beautiful, whether it's oceans, mountains, like sand dunes, river, like they just have everything out here in Oregon. So it's really going awesome.
Awesome. Right before the podcast, we were talking about the weather out there, and you were expressing that some concern about the beautiful weather, the streak. It's beautiful, which is awesome, right?
It is. Yeah, it can be kind of ups and downs. So where I live is like right on the coast on the ocean. So usually we're a bit more fogged in, a little cooler. You know, it's basically between 55 and 65 almost every single day of the year. So like people love to retire here that are just looking for predictable lifestyles without the hot or cold. But it's been just so beautiful. But with just global warming, sometimes that leads to fires in the later parts of the year. Yeah, so we shall see what this summer looks like. But so far, the late spring, early summer has been off to a wonderful start. So
that's awesome. So the summer, as you said, is upon us. Any items on your summer list that you hope to accomplish?
I kind of it is somewhat job related, but the funding we got in our nonprofit, the Oregon Trio Association, a lot of it's tied to like the state legislature, which operates in these 2-year biennium budgets.
Yeah.
And the funding kind of that we got was set to expire at the end of this month. So the big goal was to let's try to get money to keep doing this work and keep doing this stuff again. So
it's important.
It's not like officially signing a bill, but we got a lot of good news as it relates to continued funding to keep doing this work. So that's definitely been the top item on the accomplished list, is kind of sustain the work we're doing out here in Oregon.
Fantastic. Well, wonderful. Talk to us about your interests and hobbies. We had shared that podcasting in the NBA, hanging out with your kids, but podcasting in the NBA, is that something that developed as an interest for you? Was it something you always enjoyed? How did that happen for you?
Basketball was just kind of like the thing I obsessed about growing up. Loved to play it as much as I could. I just like going to the community center, playing, and I liked watching it. Like I was born in 87, so around the first time I feel like I was really conscious of sports on TV was like the end of the Michael Jordan era. So when you're like hero is just wins every single time and always makes the game-winning shot, it's just such a way to spoil you. So I just fell in love with it. I was never that great at it, but just really loved it. And then as I transitioned into kind of professional, you slowly have less and less free time, particularly once I transitioned being a parent. And podcasts kind of became a perfect avenue to still engage with kind of sports, and particularly the NBA. So I spend probably, for every 1 hour of basketball I watch, I probably listen to 40 hours of podcasts about basketball. It's probably a problem at this point, but as an adult, I've just found podcasts to be such an amazing, I just am a natural learner. I love learning and expanding my mind, but I don't often have the patience to sit down and read a book, and podcasts are just the best to do it while driving or chores or dishes or walking a dog. I just love the efficient nature, and you can speed it up. Once I learned you could go times and a half on the speed to, I couldn't quite go that fast when I first started. I'm a 1.5 person.
Oh, wow.
So I can just consume so much stuff so quickly. And I'm a really big fan of that, but it allows me to kind of focus on my family, kids, my job, but still make time for some of my dorky interests or following Marvel or Star Wars, right?
Kind
of
right on.
Fandom stuff. Yeah. I love podcasts that I'll go watch the movie, but then I'll listen to 7 hours of people talking about it. And that community, I love the sense of community that podcasts can kind of build and create. So yeah, one of the reasons I'm super excited to be doing this. I'm a huge fan
amazing.
of the platform. Yeah.
And FYI, I'm also a huge Marvel fan as well. So
There we
just
go.
throwing that out there. Huge Marvel fan.
It's hard to find. There's becoming so many of them now. It's hard to find people that have actually kept up with it all. That's why I went to podcasts. I'm like, look, they will always watch it opening weekend. That's my
Oh my gosh,
crew,
yeah.
because my
Yeah.
friends who are kind of into it like stopped around movie 20 something, and I'm like, no, keep it going. Every TV show you gotta. So I appreciate that one.
Absolutely, absolutely. I gotta ask, have you watched Across the Spider-Verse?
Yeah, of course.
Oh my gosh, such a great movie. So I don't want this to turn into a Across the Spider-Verse suddenly an episode of an entire
everybody
Marvel segment.
should be watching. I know I know that's not even Marvel, right? It's Sony, but most people have not gone into the animated, right? It's mostly live action. Like, this is absolutely worth it. And the OG one, Into the Spider-Verse. Like, I'm not a huge animated person traditionally, just don't quite have the time to make room for those, but like, they are so worth it if you have not dipped your toe into kind of the animated dorkiness of Marvel. So
that's awesome. And me personally, I rank Across the Spider-Verse as number one among Spider-Man films, because it's just such a solid story. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you. So what is a personal goal that you have for yourself for 2023 that you've accomplished? Well, either a goal that you've accomplished and a goal that you have yet to accomplish.
So when I went into the end of 2022, I try to like work out and be active now. I kind of have quit playing basketball, so I'm like, I just want to stay just fit enough, but I'm really terrified of like getting hurt. So if I'm like lifting weights, I am never looking to like go heavy, because I just don't want to hurt myself. But I'd like tried learning to like squat. I had never done that my whole life till like into my 30s. And I was just so afraid to go heavy. So at the end of going into this year, I was like, I'm going to try to squat like this number I had in my head. It's not even that. I think it's like 275. It's not even that big of a number.
Right.
And I had maybe gotten to like 250 ever. And then just setting that goal, I meant like, that was kind of all it took, because then like one day, on the day of like January 1st, 2023, I was like, okay, let's like try going a little above and a little more. And I literally hit my like year-long fitness goal on the first day of 2023.
Awesome.
And I was just kind of like, well, clearly I'm not challenging myself enough here, but also like, boom, goal accomplished day one. Like, it's all downhill from here. So that was like one of my personal goals I had set. And as far as not yet accomplished, this kind of gets more in the professional realm. A lot of what I've been doing with Oregon Trio Association, I'm the only like technical full-time employee. I have a handful of like kind of contracted folks and like AmeriCorps folks who have been worked with, but I was really hoping if we could get refunded, kind of expand and try to actually add some other staff and try to like really grow this out to like a real nonprofit organization. So we're still kind of on the cusp of that, knowing that we have some future funding is kind of the first step. So we're working to branch that out, but hopefully by the end of the year, we can actually like fully expand and start having more supports available here for folks in our state. So that one's yet to happen, but I'm feeling good.
That's amazing. So Matt, this is the part of the podcast where I have the guests rewind the clock with me a little bit, because we want to talk, kind of want to get to know you and your upbringing and, you know, everything that you went through. So can you talk to us about your upbringing and what was that like for you?
Definitely. I grew up in Chaska, Minnesota. It is a suburb of the Twin Cities, west suburb. It's like right on the edge of farm country / suburb. So half my friends were like farmers that had to milk cows before schools, and the other half, their parents, you know, were accountants and stuff and just lived in suburbia. So it was a nice, like I got to have a lot of different experiences. My family definitely grew up more on the low income side. My dad didn't actually graduate high school. He had dropped out and was working as like a welder, but not like a unionized welder or anything. But my mom was a college graduate and was like an elementary school teacher. I was the oldest of three brothers, and like out of all the cousins, I was just kind of always the oldest. So I feel like I was kind of a little bit of a troublemaker when I was younger, until basically school started to actually challenge me. I was probably once I hit like junior high, because I just had to spend so much time in my mom's like classroom, because she would like be doing lesson plans or grading schoolwork. So I just had to spend so much time in a school environment that I just kind of feel like through osmosis, always been able to stay ahead enough, or school felt pretty easy, and like elementary school and those sort of things. And she was a wonderful influence. But I always just carried being like the oldest sibling and the oldest cousin, just a lot of sense of like responsibility. And like my dad, I love him to like death, but just wasn't great with money, and being like low income and somebody have a father who's not good with money. Like I just always had this dread of like things weren't always like gonna work out. So I just carried a lot of like responsibility, I want to say, growing up. But yeah, I don't know. I just had I had parents who like tried their best, like didn't particularly do anything wrong. I had room for improvements. But had one thing I would say was really wonderful. I had grandparents that were like pretty young, so I got to spend like a ton of time with my grandparents growing up, and they were like really huge influences for me. And my great grandmother even like raised me up until I was 10. Wow. So she just was like kind of my go-to babysitter, and I spent a lot of time with them. So it was really fun being able to hang around kind of my elders and like these, you know, parents of my parents and great grandparents, and spend a lot of time with them. They let me win at games. I'm like a very competitive person by nature. Really? If you're familiar with like the Strength Finders at all, like competitions number one. And my great grandma would just let me win at every single game ever, always. And it just instilled this like almost arrogance that like my parents wish had never been put there, because I would just beat them at games forever. And they were just like, what was she doing with you that you would become so good at all these mundane games? But yeah, and I stayed in Minnesota until graduating high school, and just had a pleasant kind of basic white cis male like Midwest upbringing. Yeah, I would say that I'll start there, because I'm sure I know that this kind of progresses through some of the timeline here. So
as you were talking about school, you said that there were some rebellious stages in your life, but was school something that you naturally were curious about, or you gravitated toward, or was it just something that was just like kind of in the background for you?
It was, because I am somebody who like does pretty good in structure, and just the idea that like you can get stars and like kudos for just completing tasks like that just aligned with my like type A brain. So I was somebody who like, you know, I recognize that schooling system is not necessarily an ideal structure for all learning types, but I was lucky to be one of those that it was like built for. So I found it was like fun to go there, and just being around like a lot of my peers, particularly once I got into like the K-8 structure. The school I went to, it was right down the block from us. It was actually like a private Catholic Franciscan school that was just like a small class. It was like a class of 25 students, and they were just all of us were just best friends, and it was mostly the same group of people. I only got to go there because we were like low income enough that they had like some scholarships, but it wasn't like a super like high end private school by any means. It was just kind of the Catholic school in this community, and I just love the small environment of it, and it was just hanging out with your best friends every single day. And we got like 2 recesses every day, right? Like there was just, I don't know. I thought I had the coolest upbringing ever, because it was just recess with your friends every day. And it was just like right down the block from my house. So I just love that kind of little community that was around my home growing up.
Yeah. Any subjects that interested you or that really stood out to you?
I've always been like a math person, just something about the logic of it. It came, actually, this kind of relates to when my mom had to kill time grading papers. Back then, the only computer she had in the classroom were like the old Macs, and they had these like word muncher floppy disks you could put in.
Yeah, I remember word munchers.
Yes. So one day I'm in preschool, kindergarten, and one day my mom came over and was like, "Oh, honey, like, how did you get on like the division parts of this game? Like, what are you doing?" And then she's watching me, and she's just like, "Wait, are you doing like division and multiplication?" And I was just like, "I don't know. I'm just playing this game." Like I accidentally learned just adding, subtracting, skip counting, multiplication, division. Like I was flirting with algebra as like preschool, kindergarten, just because of this dumb game on this Mac. And so math was unbelievably easy for me by the time I got to first and second. Like I was ready to do multiplication tables. So by the time we were hitting that, and back then it's not very like trauma informed, but we doing like around the world with like math index cards, and I would just be like, again, competition. I would just be eviscerating the room, and like, yeah, I felt so validated in math.
How would your family describe you when you were young?
Uh, Man, that's a good question. But I think just like competitive, just
Competitive?
like sports. Like if there was, we had kind of an unfinished basement, so I just loved throwing on like Mighty Ducks, and I would grab a hockey puck and a tennis ball and just whack it against the wall for an hour and a half watching a movie, or Angels in the Outfield, take a tennis ball and just chuck it against the wall. So just like enjoyed sports. Um, I met, I think it's hard to remember when you're that young, but just like a sense of
Yeah.
responsibility. My brothers were 4 and 7 years younger than me.
Hmm.
And the middle one was like a huge jerk to the youngest one. So I
Oh
always felt the need to
no.
like stand up for them and like look out for
Yeah.
them. And school didn't come as easy to them. And, like just even just in the context of our family and some of the drama we would occasionally go through, just kind of felt like I like the validation. I had all these grandparents involved, and they just loved when I would get A's or go to things. Or so I was just like a very punctual person. Like I was very good at, you know, pleasing other people, which maybe isn't always the healthiest thing as you go into adulthood. But like I was everybody's favorite grandkid for that reason. Cause just wasn't a troublemaker. Liked, following the rules and being responsible. So I think that's
Yeah.
probably how I would be described.
Do you have a favorite memory of you and your family?
When I was younger, my father's parents got like this little cabin, and like every 4th of July, it was just like a tradition that we would go and kind of just me and all cousins. There were probably like 11 of us, and just like hanging out and jumping in a lake. And just because it was like an annual tradition, I think that one stands out more to me. But yeah, just like 4th of July up at the lake, just Minnesota summer. Like it's a blast during the day and it's hot, and then you just have to run away when the mosquitoes come in.
Yeah.
Then you're just
Oh my
like playing
gosh.
games at night with your cousins. So yeah, that was. And again, I was just the oldest of them all, so everybody kind of looked up to me, and you felt like had to look out for everyone and like make sure the little ones were like included and stuff. So it was always just like a fun environment for me to be in.
Right on. Outside of school, did you have a lot of interest? And you kind of alluded to that, interest in sports, athletics, things like that.
Yeah, that was like peak ESPN, like Sports Center time
Oh
too.
wow.
So
Yeah.
I love to have my one grandparents would always like Christmas gift my parents cable. So I was felt so lucky to have like cable because I could just watch ESPN. I would watch everything, like darts, bowling. Like you put it on TV and like I'm watching anything competition, you do it, I'm watching it.
Mhm.
My mom was like somehow an early adopter of like video games. Even I just never
Wow,
remember not
really?
having video games around. So like I just had
Wow.
a Nintendo in my room as soon as I was like even old enough to remember. And she just wanted to play like Dr. Mario. So, but I
Mm.
did always enjoy playing video games. And like I want to say even like the Pokemon stuff came out right when I was like 10, just a sucker for that kind of stuff. So it was fun to kind of be a part of that when it was just new systems and the technology was advancing so much, and like the golden eye stages and the Halo through junior
Oh
high
my
and high
gosh.
school. It's like just back then it was like such a fun way to like it was stuff I liked to do by myself or with my brothers, and then as it advanced you could kind of play with friends. So
Yeah.
yeah, and just the sport, because I was so obsessed with sports, the games just kept getting so good, and you could like run franchises, and like having to deal with like salary caps and free agent signing because I was such a like math dork. I'd spend more time doing that than like playing the sport. So I definitely spent too much of my time doing the video games when I was
I,
in
I
junior
do
high and high
remember
school.
when EA Sports released their NBA Live, and how you could do transactions as an owner of
Oh
one of the
yeah,
organizations, right? It was so crazy. And to me, like, it was like, oh, max out the salary, it's cool. But you sat down and actually calculated the net worth of each player, it sounds like.
yeah. I mean, because you had to like do contract negotiations and
Oh,
understand the
wow.
salary cap and like the rules around it, because like you couldn't sign players if you were over the salary cap, or like
Right, right, right.
what's a mid-level exception, all this insane like lawyer lingo that relates to like collectively bargained agreements between player unions and leagues. I'm there as like a 10-year-old figuring this out so I can sign Tracy McGrady. But they even let you like build draft classes. So you could like, if you had like several hours, you could build a 60-player draft class of like every friend and like custom make everyone and like build their stats, and then you could draft them into the NBA Live like game. And like, so I did all that stuff.
That is intense. Matt, you were just like really honed into like, I'm going to get the full value of this game.
Yeah. Yes, I very much did.
That's awesome. Do you remember much of middle school, and what was that experience like for you?
So the middle school was like the best time for me, like because it was that small, like it was such a small group of students, and like a lot of us just roll the dice. All were kind of like oldest kids, at least a lot of like the male friends I had. So like we were just so tight. In the middle school years, because like the little middle school kind of had little sports teams. So it's one thing to like play on the travel team or the town team, but once it was like you and all your best friends on a basketball team or baseball team, like, or like watching the girls in your class like play volleyball and just like the silly school dances. I just loved that. Like I'm more of a small, intimate, more like introverts that likes deep relationships with a small group of people, and it was just like such a good time for me. And like even like some of the extracurricular activities, like just joined like band, and I really don't care much for trombone, but I took up trombone because they had like it's like any junior high choirs, like 9 flutes, like 4 trumpets and 3 percussionists, and that's it. So they were like, they had found out my dad played the trombone for a little bit, and the choir director was like, oh, they like totally manipulated me into doing it. But I like played the trombone so I could play the boring bass lines and all our stuff. I played traveling sports and the sports there on the teams. They didn't really have much for like clubs or any of that kind of stuff, but I just love the experience of kind of this core group of people, and you're just in the same classes with these same people, and we were all just such tight friends. And even in junior high, like things probably should get weird with like boys and girls or relationships, and like we didn't even realize that was like an option, most of us, because we didn't have older siblings, and it is kind of this like Catholic environment, so it's a bit more of a goody two shoe. So like I remember it was like end of 7th grade, one of the boys asked one of the girls to like go out, and we're all just staring at each other like, what is going on? I don't understand what's happening. So 8th grade got a little weirder in that sense, but we were just a bunch of like goody two shoe, like just friends who just liked hanging out and enjoyed that kind of time of our lives. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. As you were doing that transition, because it sounds like you really enjoyed the extracurricular activities that you joined in middle school. As your time for high school approached, do you remember like what you felt, what you were thinking as you were about to transition to high school?
Yeah. So most of it, I'd always, once you kind of had started getting like letter grades, I did like well enough. I was one of those kids who just didn't feel like I had to try super hard. Like I tried enough. I wasn't like bare minimum. But I feel like I was able to just kind of show up, do the work, and do pretty well in grades. So I wasn't like nervous about high school in that sense. But the biggest nerves were just that we're at this school where like a lot of these students that you've spent 8 years with aren't all going to the same high school. Like there are private schools in a couple different cities. There's a couple different public high schools, and we're all kind of from a wide enough stretch where we're all potentially about to get like split up. And some of my like very closest friends, a couple of them weren't sure what they were going to do. And there was like this new private, like Catholic high school that had opened up too. And they offered some like scholarships out to like the top boy and girl in each graduating class that year from all the like different junior highs. And like one of my closest friends, like both boy and girl who were going to be going to the public high school with me, got those scholarships, and we're now going to be going to an entirely different high school. So I remember there was just like quite a bit of fear and uncertainty. And in the town I grew up in, the graduating classes were 650 students. Whoa. So I'm coming from like a class of 25 for 8 years, and I'm moving into just a school that's going to have 2,500 kids in it. So I was nervous, but I really just enjoyed that year, enjoyed that summer. There was like a theme park that was it's called Valley Fair. It's like a low end value Six Flags. And I remember you could get like a student pass for like $70 and you could just go every day because none of us were quite working yet. So it was just like the best summer hanging out with these friends, and felt like, we knew that this was potentially going to be something that was going to be hard to replicate moving forward.
Absolutely.
I think that was where it was like total elation and joy to kind of be living in this moment, but also a little fear of what was coming.
Yeah. So in that moment of you knowing this transition to high school was coming, what do you remember most about that transition, like as it was happening?
I think during the transition period, it was just like for some reason when I was at that age, I saw so many adults who were just so desperately trying to live like kids again. And I
Really?
just had this mentality where I was like, I am not going to be one of these high schoolers because I see a bunch of high schoolers who are trying to just pretend to be adults. I'm like, it
Hmm.
seems like
Hmm.
most people just want to act like kids most of their life, but they can't. They got too much responsibilities. And then your peak ages of like be able to just be a young person, people are just trying to work and like be adults. So I was like convinced, like, you know what? Like, I'm going to not work if I can get away like as little as possible. And I just want to like enjoy being a kid because you only get to do this once. So I feel
Wow.
like that was the mindset I was carrying into like that transition to high school.
Wow. Did any of your extracurriculars carry over with you?
None. So
None, really?
I went to the big high school, and the worst part, honestly, was that of my like core group of probably like six really close friends,
Hmm.
two of them went to the public high school I went to. Now, the one was like a three sport awesome athlete, but he was like cross country, wrestling, and track. Um, and those just like weren't sports I was interested in. Like I didn't play football and just don't have an aggressive enough nature. But I was like, I love basketball, I like baseball. Um, but going into high school, my one friend was just so, you know, busy in sports, and I didn't want to do those sports. And that other friend just started working at like Domino's. It was just working all
Wow.
the time. So I was like, okay, whatever. Like, hopefully, I can like play sports. But the problem is, I chose the two sports where they actually cut people. You got to be good enough. As much as I love basketball, I'm like, I am good, but like at a school that's 2,500 people deep, like I'm still just 6 feet tall. I'm not that athletic, and as I mentioned, just like a white dude, right? Like I do my best, but
Hmm.
like I wasn't good enough, and so I just didn't make the teams. So and I just got swallowed up by the monstrosity that was the school and was so nervous and had no self-confidence and insecure. The idea of like making friends, I just never had to do that, right? Like you just show up in first grade and like these are the kids in your class and you just spent 8 years with them. It was so easy. And because I had those couple friends as crutches to go like hang out with between periods or like when I wanted to be social,
Hmm.
like it kind of prevented me from having to go make a lot of new friends. So it was hard. Yeah.
So talk to us about that, about your first year in high school. What was that like for you?
Um, I just felt like it's not like people didn't value you. Like I just felt invisible in a way that's
Mm-hmm.
like not bad. Like I wasn't somebody being picked on or anything, but like you're just somebody who shows up to class. Um, yeah, and I don't. It almost felt like going to some big university. Like it almost felt like
Mm.
this fish out of water. Like I was used to sitting in like one class all day. So even like jumping between classrooms and I would do class and like I actually had to do some homework for the first time. Like it felt like kind of real school and I like wanted to do a good job with it.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I definitely kind of reverted kind of into a shell of myself. Was like, you know what? Like I'm just gonna try hard in school and just I kind of leaned into being a kid in the ways that were like I'm just gonna play video games and hang out with my younger brother. I felt really blessed at that time, honestly, that I had younger brothers
Hmm.
because I still got to do like childish stuff, like go to the
Yeah.
pool a bunch and like I kind of just stayed more of a younger kid and like I was mature enough in terms of responsibility, but just kind of was so horrified by anything to do with high school. The idea of like going to a party or talking to a girl or
Hmm.
somebody I
Hmm.
liked or trying to go make a new friend or ask somebody to like hang out with you. It just terrified me so much. And I just felt like I wasn't ready for it. And at the same time, like my parents were just kind of like busy and chaotic. And
Hmm.
I felt like I just didn't have anybody to go and talk to. So I definitely just kind of turned inward and kind of, yeah, just shelled up during those experiences and like was very much woe was me. Like I could have just joined clubs or tried sports that didn't require like any of the sports, any
Hmm.
other sport. I could have at least been on the team and been at practices, but I kind of just, reverted inward and was like, I'm just going to do good enough in school and just kind of pass my time. and just kind of get through this slog. It's only 4 years.
It's only 4 years. Yeah. But you shared a little bit about your high school experience. Anything in high school that you really liked, or things that were not your priority?
I feel like everything that related to being social was not a priority, right?
Oh,
I was
okay.
like, I'm just gonna like go to school. I had a interesting high school. They had these block schedules where
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I know high schools have all kinds of weird structures, but ours were basically, you only had 4 classes a day, an hour and a half a piece.
Mm-hmm.
So in one quarter was essentially a semester worth of classwork time. So in one half of a year was essentially a whole year of schoolwork. So there was stuff like math. I liked math. You could complete an entire year of math in half a year and then just take another year of math. So like the subject you really cared about, you could get like really advanced in.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that, like I could get into calculus by the time I was a junior. And then it turns out that class was hard and I'm not actually built for like really, really high end math. So I kind of was excited to do that. They had like the one benefit of being in a massive school is they had a lot of like cool extracurricular courses. So like I got into like accounting classes and loved the teacher. Wow. And I ended up accounting 3 wasn't really even a class, but I like independent studied it and like could be like a TA for the teacher. And like, so, yeah, I kind of appreciate, that's where I kind of shifted my love of like math into more the business side of things. I love taking all the business courses and like, it's more like applied mathematics to this like competitive environment of the, of businesses and that sort of thing. So I did appreciate that. I think that kind of became my priority. It was kind of building for the next thing. I kind of had already punted, even by sophomore year. I was like, well, high school isn't working out for me. Let's start building towards hopefully college, I guess. Like, nice. I hopefully can do that.
Which is a wonderful segue to the next question. For many high school students, college become part of that conversation, right? For a lot of high school students, they start thinking about college. They contemplate whether or not they want to attend, or some of them even have an extensive list of colleges. Did you and your family think about college for you and what that might look like?
I honestly hadn't. It was something I presumed I could kind of go. I was so lucky my mom went and was a teacher, because she just knew like, oh, you kind of need to sign up for like these SATs. And I was like, it was ACT there. Mm-hmm, and I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, I have no idea. I wasn't like one of these AP everything kids. I did some like dual enrollment courses, but I was not like the super high end where like you're getting force fed all the high end college stuff. So my mom was just like, no, you should, like, you're going to go to college, like based on what you say you want to do. And you're doing well enough in school, you should move on. So it's always there, but it was never like mapped out entirely. And if it wasn't for her doing, like, I think back having done like trail advising stuff, I'm just like, man, like once you really dive in and are doing that work, you realize how complex it is if you're doing pre-college stuff and like how many steps there are, and just how grateful I was to have a mom who had been through that, I wasn't the first gen. I wasn't just figuring this out on the fly and trying to do FAFSA. Like I had somebody there helping me do that. But it's kind of started sophomore year and junior year, had me do tests and do some like college visits. So luckily I found one of these sites that just has one of these like college filters. So I was able to really like, she's like, okay, you need to like, if you're going to do the ACT, you have to send your scores somewhere. So you got to figure out where you want to go. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know. So I did one of these like cool filter things where I was just like, I want to study finance. That was where I settled. I'm like, I know I took all these accounting courses, but like finance, I don't want to just be an accountant. I don't want to just do math or teach math. I had an uncle who did that and coached basketball. I thought still think he's one of the coolest guys out there. I was just kind of like, well, let's see what this finance is. So I like filtered out just that degree, and it's not that common of a degree at the time. And that kind of helped. And I knew I wanted like a small school, right? I needed that small community. And I kind of just threw in some other states. It's like a why not, like Wisconsin, and I chucked Illinois on there just to see what happened. So the filter came back with like a small group of colleges, and I just we made a decision, like after scoping the websites out, like, okay, here's a Minnesota option, and here's a backup Minnesota option. And like, hey, there's this school in Illinois, like, why not? And we did like a visit out there when I was a junior, and I just like loved it. And they just rolled out the red carpet. They're like, we don't get like state folks here very often. So like, I felt so wined and dined doing that visit, and my mom was horrified about it. But yeah, I think that was about the breadth of kind of the prep that went into college while I was in high school.
Right on. Talk to us about the moment you graduated high school. What was that moment like for you?
It's interesting because clearly I hated my high school experience so much and regret so much about it. And I thought graduation, I was just like, this isn't that hard. Like, you show up, you do the work. That was my approach. I'm pretty much graduate anyone who does show up every day and turns everything in. So I didn't think it was going to be that big a deal. And like, there was no grade. I didn't even graduate with honors because I was an A- kid, which is like,
that's still pretty good.
Like but it's like a 3.66 on their weighted scale, and a 3.75 is graduating with honors. So like, I had like no special chords. I was a kid in the yearbook. Every year I'm in there once. It's just your class. And then senior was twice because it's like the baby picture and then where you're in class. So like, I didn't think it would mean that much, but like just having like my grandparents and family and everyone there, like it felt cool. Just be like, okay, I did, like, as much as I kind of underplayed and I didn't love my high school experience, like, you did it. This was still a step. Right. That is, a stepping stone towards more opportunities that are out there, and you did it. And like that, I remember that being a cool moment. And I never gone to a school dance. I never went to prom. Me and my buddy went to Mall of America and IKEA, our senior prom night, instead of going to prom. That was way better. I had a blast just goofing around Mall of America with my buddy instead of going to prom. So I never done a school thing, but that night they did like the all night, like, senior celebration, so kids aren't out getting into trouble. And my mom taught me to like just do that one thing. And that actually was like a total blast and like such a fun time. So I feel like I ended on a really high note for that like high school experience. Was just the day of graduation and that night of the senior celebration.
That's awesome. Can you tell me about the college that you ultimately decided to attend, and why did you choose that college?
So it is the University of St. Francis in Joliet, Illinois. I chose it because at the time, I was still like I grown up Catholic, raised Catholic, and I loved that Catholic experience I had in the K-8, the small, intimate environment. And it was like this Franciscan kind of like touch on this K-8 school. So here I find this small Catholic Franciscan university that's in a different state. It felt like an opportunity to hit the reset button and be like, okay, try again, right? Like, high school didn't go well, but I knew like, this isn't who I am. I feel like I'm capable of more than this. This isn't how I want to define myself. Like, this is a chance to start over. Nobody knows who you are, right? And not that I need to like reinvent myself, but I can just present myself in a way that hopefully I can do it with more confidence and just like be myself from day one. And this school, just like, there was like 500 students who lived on campus. I think 1,800 total in the whole university. A fair amount like commuted in because it was close. It was like an hour from Chicago, right? It was like kind of the south suburb of Chicago. And it just felt cool to like be going out of state and be able to like take a train to downtown Chicago. Like, it just felt like such an opportunity. And I was excited by the idea of being off on my own, just because I always felt pretty responsible. And I was just like, this is an opportunity to just be like, it is on you. You got to figure your stuff out. And I kind of was thrilled by the challenge of like, okay, like, you are your own person, but mostly just excited to like have a chance to try again. And I also got offered into like the honors program. I don't think it was that prestigious, but it offered me a little extra money. I got like decent scholarships. I got a fair amount of like Pell Grant opportunity, and then being in the honors, it just made me feel special. And I never felt special for 1 second in my high school. And they just, like I said, when I did that visit, they're like, oh my gosh, we have a VP here who went to Minnesota, and he actually graduated from the same state school in Minnesota my mom did. And they just were like, just made me feel so seen that it just felt incredible to be in this environment. So that was ultimately why I chose it.
That's awesome. Talk about the moment that you set foot on campus. What did you feel, and what's some of the feelings that you took in?
Man, it just felt like family from the first moments. Like, people just saw me and they'd be like, you're the like Minnesota kid. Like, people came up and talked to me, and like staff. And because I was in the honors program, I got to get there a few days early from the rest of the freshmen with some of the other honors students and do some programming. And it just helped me because I have a hard time meeting new people. It kind of gave me a core group, it kind of gave me some inroads of like, okay, these are like 30 other students that you kind of know. And it felt like a home away from home. Like, I just from the moment I got on there, I'm just like, this place feels like home, feels like a place I can be. It's just the right size for what I need to kind of like find myself and like really be my best self.
Did you know what degree or program you wanted to major in?
I did, right? So I like looked so hard at the finance major. So they had this finance degree. The funny thing is I was actually the only in my graduating class, it was the only finance major. So
really?
I literally had some classes. It was more like the really high level courses, but I had 2 classes where it was just 2 students. And the guy who taught the class was an early tech adapter, and he loved it was all these Wacom products. It's still a company that exists. All these Bluetooth keyboards and mics, and it had like a pad he could draw. So he would just sit between us in the classroom facing the screen.
Yeah.
And they like, I just felt like I learned so much because every day was just like conversation. And I built such a good relationship because they don't have like tons of professors. So like you really got to like know them. And
absolutely.
It was finance, and then economics kind of happened because I realized like I didn't need that many extra classes. Like I liked the economics teacher, and I was just like, I don't need that many extra classes. So all the prereqs are the same, all the basic business prereqs are the same. Like it's just like 8 more classes to get us do the economics thing too. So I kind of tacked that on after the fact. It was a lot of, I liked economics because it was finance is basically taking all the math that accountants do, and then like how do you make decisions. Like I didn't want to just be a number cruncher. I found I was really good at explaining complex spreadsheets or numbers in a way that like makes sense to a layperson, right? So if I have to talk to a board of directors or make a presentation, I can make numbers make sense to regular people because they always tell you something. Good. You can delegate an entire strategy for an organization just based on like a balance sheet and, you know, fiscal statements and those sort of things. But like that takes some time to interpret. So I like that. But the economics was fun because it was more like sociology. It was like the why people make decisions they do, or like why is the cost of gas going up? So more like these I don't know, I found it to be a fun balance.
Yeah, that's awesome. So earlier in the podcast you said you chose finance, you chose the world of finance because it was something that drew you. You were already kind of a whiz at mathematics. What had you settle on this major, or not even the word settle, I don't like that. What helped you decide like this is the major I want to be in?
I just thought I liked the creative. Maybe some of it even dates back to some of the stuff I do in those video games, right? You're basically taking numbers, and you got to make decisions with them. And that was more fun and creative. I did enough accounting work in high school and in my early years in college. I'm like, okay, this is like really important to do this stuff right. But your job is just to kind of do it right. There's not a lot of like decision making. Like there are rules and you follow them. And it's complex and it's involved. Same with mathematics. Like unless you're getting into like theoretical physics and stuff, like there's not a ton of creativity. Like you're learning complex stuff and then applying it to real world problems. Whereas finance, you know, there's a lot of just strategy and like gamification and some competitiveness. So it's all like the nerdy number stuff I love spreadsheets so much. I got so good at Excel in college, but really it was just like I needed the like creative twinge in here. Like I need to still feel like I'm being challenged or creative, or like I have an empty space I can fill instead of just like completing tasks. And finance was just like because I always found the marketing people were just like, oh, I'm going to major in being creative and applying it to business. And I'm like, okay, like it didn't feel as technical as like a major, even management. Like I'm studying how to manage people because I should be the boss. I always found those just kind of, I always scoffed at those people a certain degree because I'm like, we're doing the real work here. Like, so yeah, that finance just appealed to me because it was kind of a balance of all the aspects of business applied it. And like most, I mean myself, like, well, one day if you want to be CEO or some like high-end decision maker in an organization, like these are the skills you need to do that stuff. It's kind of a mix of everything, and that appealed to me.
Right on. How involved did you get in college?
As involved as humanly possible.
It really?
Just literally the polar opposite of high school. I started multiple clubs. I was the president of multiple clubs. I eventually was like my student body president when I was a senior. Just like I kind of even stopped being specifically Catholic while I was in a Catholic university, but I still got hired in to be a peer minister, which is essentially like the Catholic, like you're a counselor-based RA.
I
And I
see.
was
I
like the
see.
only non-Catholic like peer minister. So I was just I didn't work really or do internships even in college. I spent more time my senior year in meetings with administrators than I did in class. So
Hmm.
I was like in the core strategic planning committee and was just involved in, student appeals. And like I just could not get enough of this college environment and college administration because there was a lot of that like strategy and decision making. I love being in meetings all day.
Hmm.
So like I couldn't get enough of being in clubs, being involved in that, doing event planning, uh, just being in the room with all these adults or deans or just these wonderfully smart, brilliant people that worked at the university and like being the student. They're always looking for student reps, and I would just throw my name out there as much as I could. So, and even academically, I was still an A- student, but at my college, an A- counted as a 4.0. So I
I
don't
mean,
know that
yeah.
my academics habits changed per se,
Hmm.
but I just did so well in the grades and everything. Like I just had the best, and like I've lived on campus all 4 years, and like every single night, if there was any events going on, right? If there was some opera singer going on in the arts and humanities, I would go to the event. There's a comedian, I would go to it. If some club had some wine, I just went to every single thing all the time. And that was
Right.
because I was still honestly horrified of kind of like the like social structure outside of the school of like partying or like kind of that. It was still horrifying to me. I like had never drank at all, mostly because I was just not a confident like person going into those spaces and being myself, or I was just afraid. I again, oldest student, like oldest kid of my family. None of my friends were into that. Like I was kind of intimidated by that side of things. So I just really latched on to university and just like was all into every single thing that you could possibly be involved in.
Right on. While in college, what did you learn about yourself?
I learned that it's fun to just challenge yourself and be an achiever. And like I learned self-confidence finally. Like it took
Good.
time to just be myself in spaces and not be like afraid what the reaction was going to be. That was like what I lacked in its entirety in high school. And I just found it again. And it felt so amazing to just like feel like I could be myself and make new friends or like be a leader within an organization or just be a follower, just like go do certain like whatever, right? Just like pursue your interests and challenge myself and get outside my box and like don't spend your
Absolutely.
time play video games. Just like go get involved in all this stuff. So like more than anything, it was just like I literally found a self-confidence and just being myself and really even I mentioned strength finders, like my number two item is like achiever too. And I feel like it just really cultivated that in me of just like, hey, like if you work hard, you show up and do the work. Like there
Hmm.
really is not a huge limit to what you can accomplish. It may take time, but that I felt really seen because if I was willing to show up and do the work, like it was a small enough community that they would just keep throwing stuff at me to take on and be a part of. And I just loved it all. So that was definitely my biggest takeaway.
All right. If I read your info correctly, is it accurate that you double majored?
I don't think I did. I think the economics was a minor because
But it sounds like,
my
yeah.
wife made my wife graduated from the same school I did,
Uh-huh.
same year. That's where we met. We got married like a month after
Oh, wow. Congratulations to both of you.
graduating college. Yeah, so shout out to Michelle, but she legit double majored. So if she ever listens to this, she's like, "Don't you?" She had to bust her butt, and hers was like biology, environmental science, which are so
Oh my
much
gosh.
harder than business and all the labs. So like, I don't want to pretend like I actually double majored because I did not work hard enough in compared to my wife who actually double majored.
To be honest, for both of you, it sounds like it does sound like double work. Like it sounds like your wife did double majoring stuff. Sounds like you did double majoring stuff. Like it sounds like crazy to me.
Yeah, but I just loved school, and I felt lucky that I had enough aid. And when I did the peer minister thing, that covered my like room and board, so like it made school like affordable enough for me. And I do feel grateful. I had some grandparents who were able to like chip in a little bit. My mom chipped in a
Hmm.
little bit. I wasn't one
Hmm.
of these low income students that got no help. Like
Hmm.
I had to take out the loans. They gave me like I just had an environment where I could fully immerse in those schools. Like it
Hmm.
breaks my heart when I see people that are just they need to work multiple jobs and have families and have
Yeah,
kids. Like they can't throw themselves into it in the same way. So like I had an incredible privilege to be able to do that, and I was glad I was able to make the most of it.
absolutely. For some students, they begin to think about their careers and what that might look like for them. Did you happen to think about your college career about like halfway in?
so I like punted on all internships because I was like, look, if I'm just like the best student at this university, like clearly I'll get a job. But in 28, I graduated in 2010, 2008 was the like recession, the housing crisis. The bottom point of it was about 2010, and particularly in the finance world.
Oh my
like,
gosh.
I came out and like, yeah, I'm a great candidate for a typical college graduate, but I'm competing with a monstrously overloaded world where like I'm competing with people that have 15 years of job experience that don't have jobs. So it was, I tried to rely on a couple like alumni connections, but jobs were so hard to come by that were like cool jobs. Like, somebody or like good. So I actually couldn't find a job for like 6 months after I graduated. So in hindsight, the people that did the internships could transition right into it. That probably would have been better for my career, but I don't really regret. Like, I think what I learned by approaching college the way I did has benefited to me so much. So even though I didn't start as high of a peg, I feel like the speed, like the momentum I had from that experience has carried me and been able to be successful, but I honestly had spent very little. I had a cool opportunity to maybe work with like there are these like big Federal Reserve banks. There's one in Chicago, like downtown Chicago. Yeah. So they had these cool like data analyst jobs, but right around the time I graduated, it was this brand new position. They were hiring 24 of them. But by the time I was interviewing, 23 were filled. And it was like a 5-month process because like it would be like you have an interview in 2 weeks. You'd interview, and then 2 weeks later you get feedback that said you're at the next round of interviews. And there were 4 rounds of interviews. So it spent over 4 months of my life waiting to hopefully get a cool job at the Federal Reserve Bank downtown. And then I just didn't get picked, and it was the last job. Right. Like I was down to like a final 2, and they just took the other person. And then they're like, sorry, we ran out of these. And I had to like start over. So I was kind of holding out too, because it sounded like such a cool job. Yeah. I wasn't putting I did not diversify my efforts there. So but I honestly, I was just so into my college experience. I didn't focus too much on what the career looked like. I was just hoping it worked out for itself.
Absolutely. Hey there. We'll be right back after a message from our sponsor.
Are you seeking guidance to enhance your TRIO project's effectiveness and success? Look no further. NOSOTROS Education Center, NEC, is here to empower your TRIO project with expert consulting services. NEC's mission is to promote the effectiveness and impact of TRIO programs. Since 2003, NEC has specialized in providing professional development and in-service staff trainings, allowable cost services, for TRIO projects across the country. The team at NEC, with over 60 years of combined TRIO experience, offers customized workshops and seminars for project staff, compliance assessments, external evaluations, working on and submitting APRs, database customization and training, development of policies and procedures manuals, and project implementation or reorganization services. Additionally, NEC has secured over $774 million in federal funding with a 92% success rate through their live and on-demand proposal workshops, assistance with data collection and review, detailed technical reviews, and comprehensive proposal development services. Join the hundreds of colleges, agencies, and TRIO projects across the country who benefited from NEC's expertise. NOSOTROS Education Center, your partner in TRIO's project success. Visit their website at nosotros.edu.org. Again, that's nosotros.edu.org.
And now, back to the podcast. Now, you also obtained your master's degree. Is that correct?
Yes.
When did you decide to pursue this degree? Because for a lot of students, it either becomes post-graduation, then they start thinking about masters. For you, was it during your undergrad years? Was it later?
It was later. I actually pursued my master's because I wanted to get a job in TRIO. If you want to be a TRIO advisor at the pre-college programs at Classic Community College here in Astoria, the minimum requirement the preferred requirement was a master's degree. And I had a friend who did the TRIO stuff. Mm-hmm. And that was why I pursued it. So initially I had taken a few classes kind of in pursuit of like an MBA.
Mm-hmm,
But I was just like, the classes were, it was literally the same textbook that I just did in like the 400 or 500 level classes. And I was like, you know what, let me just I've heard from people I trust to like, just take a break. Like, yeah, you can get a master's, but it's going to be a better experience if you wait and have real work experience under your belt. So I didn't do it right away. I actually went back several years later because I was like, you know what, I want to work in Trio.
Yeah, and we get to talk about that here in just a moment. So talk to us about the moment you graduated from college. What was that moment like for you?
That was just the best because I was like 8 hours away from where I grew up. And then my again, kind of these grandparents that have been privileged enough to have my life, all four of them were still alive and kicking. And they just really never really been able to come out and see me. Like I just kind of disappeared. They used to see me all the time and they're like, you know, they kind of had heard things, but it's different to see it. So to graduate, like, you know, as the number, like each school in Illinois awards a Lincoln Laureate. You get a medal with like Abraham Lincoln on it. And get to go to the state capitol. So it's not just based on like grades. It's like a lot of stuff. So I was like selected as like the Lincoln Laureate. So high school graduation, no extra garb. This, I had like 9 different cords from all the honor society.
Wow.
Medal with Abe Lincoln on it. Like I just had everything. I got to be on the stage throughout the whole graduation and like do the commencement stuff as one of the, so like, and for my family who hadn't kind of been able to see me a while, to be able to see that, to have like the president of the university, I got to have like weekly meetings with him my senior year as like the president, to have him like come up and just say such kind things to my grandparents was just such a cool moment. Because I feel like I just so disappeared, and not that they like weren't proud of me in high school, but I quit. They loved coming to my sports, and I quit playing sports, and I just quit. I kind of just was a nice kid, and then to like suddenly become this, and just to see how much pride they had in this, and kind of validate like, why did you go so far to like go to school, and then be like, wow, I see why this was the perfect place for you. And it was just such a cool moment. Like that place meant so much to me. It was my home for 4 years. I went back to Minnesota my summer between freshman and sophomore year, but the next 2 summers I just stayed on campus and lived in the dorms during the summer and like got jobs in Chicago, like commuting downtown. So like it was just my home, and it was like scary to be graduating, but like I said, I was also like getting married in a month, so it was kind of like
wow,
so on to the next phase, right? Wow. Like it would have been horrifying if not for that, but we were both graduating, about to get married and like start this new life. So it was just
amazing,
like such an amazing experience for me, and I just love that my college so much.
What careers were you considering or exploring after graduation?
Yeah, the problem with a finance degree is finance is a super generic word, and you could kind of do a lot of things.
Right.
Like if you're an accountant, you go be an accountant. If you're a teacher, you're a teacher, right? Like, and I was like, shoot, you can kind of do a lot of things. And because of like where we're at with the recession, it was so limited. So like I was looking at jobs in like banks, and like I didn't really want to do insurance. It's hard because what I want to do is more like analyst stuff, right? There's kind of this data analyst. I want to be a financial analyst and not just like work in a bank. But those jobs, they wanted experience. Like you don't know how to do that from like your time in school. You know, like the terms and like I thought I could prove like, well, clearly I can learn well enough. Like look at my transcript, but like, yeah, it was kind of hard pursuing stuff. Eventually, I settled into it was kind of like this leadership development program with a regional bank, where they kind of like, you got to be a teller for a bit, then a personal banker, then customer service, then a loan officer. And the idea is they would like place you. But the hope is they're kind of like expediting you into some more leadership positions. So it felt like kind of special. So that was my first job eventually, was working in kind of banking and doing all those background tasks. And I eventually kind of started working more like behind the scenes at like the corporate headquarters and more like operations instead of like at a branch or those sort of things. So that's where all my finance world kind of led me to eventually.
All right. How did you find out about Trio?
So I didn't love that job because it was just like there were 3 rich white dudes that owned a bank, and like it was missionless. I didn't feel a purpose in the work I was doing. So I only did that job for like less than 2 years, and it quit and had some time off. And then me and my wife, we moved out to Oregon kind of on a whim. I had literally no family within 2,000 miles. I'd never been to Astoria. We just moved here. And I told
what was the draw? I'm curious. What was the draw to Oregon?
When I quit my job, she'd quit her job, and we were voluntarily retired for a little bit, and we had found this program called WOOFing, Worldwide Opportunities for Organic Farming. And basically, you make a trade-off. You find someone and go, they will feed you and give you a place to stay, and you kind of work for free. And it's a way to kind of travel and see the world. And we found a place in Southern Oregon and just like hung out there for like a whole summer between jobs. And was just like, man, this place is beautiful, super cool. We like Pacific Northwest. So we kind of were living out of her parents' house for a little bit, figuring out what we were going to do through like the fall and into the winter. We're like, you know what, let's just move to Oregon. Why not? So we picked a few kind of small towns. We like more of the small town vibe. And then the first place we could find a rental on Craigslist that allowed a big dog. We just got a puppy that was going to be a big Great Pyrenees.
Yeah.
Like we want a little house that's walkable to downtown, like a cool, like enough going on, but a small town that allows big dogs. And the first place we found, we just packed up a moving van and drove across the country. And we still are renting that place to this day. In Astoria, Oregon. So it just showed up. But when I got here, I promised I wasn't going to work in a bank again or insurance. It was close enough. But the problem is I'm like, I could just take an office job. I'm good at office jobs. But I moved to a town that has no office jobs. It's like tourism and fishing and logging.
Oh, okay. So yeah, interesting.
It was a bit of a struggle first. Did some odd and end jobs. Worked for this amazing family that was like a manufacturer's rep, but it's just a basic office job. The view is amazing. It's out over the Columbia River, like looking out towards the ocean. There was like a whale swimming out in front of us in the river one day. Yeah. Like it was an amazing family, amazing job, but just not a lot of aspirations like career-wise. And I didn't, same kind of mission-driven stuff. But one of my best friends I met, shout out to Jen Rasmussen, she was a talent search advisor at the time. Just loved her job. That was the coolest thing ever. And I would talk to her about it and be like, God, you just get to like change kids' lives every day. That sounds like the coolest thing ever. How do I get a job there? She's like, well, there's not always openings that come up, but you'd be more competitive if like, she's like, I don't have a master's. You can get it without it. But if you got one, that would make it more competitive because you've never worked in education. So that's when I enrolled in like this totally online 1-year accelerated master's program at Concordia University.
Wow.
Just in the hopes I could eventually work in trios. But I heard about it from her and just her experiences. Was just like, I want to do that. I think I want to go work with kids and change their lives. So I'm going to go get a master's. And luckily, as soon as I got the master's, a half-time, no benefit job opened up. And it was like, am I really going to do this? And my daughter had just been born. My oldest daughter, Evelyn, was born. I had like 5 months left in my master's program. And then I looked to switch jobs and just like, was like, you know what? Just go with my gut, roll the dice. I'm just going to take this half-time, no benefit, upper bound job and just see what happens in this world of trio. Cause I think this is my place.
Yeah, that is amazing. So this is, as you were talking about, this is also the time you were also pursuing in the same time, a master's degree. Can you talk to us a little bit about that graduate experience and what was that like for you?
It was totally online, never set foot on campus. The university actually is like totally went under. It doesn't even exist anymore, but my degree still counts.
All right. Yeah.
I didn't realize like 2 months into the program, I didn't even get to walk because I didn't realize you had to sign up for it like 2 months into the program. So it was weird. And I kind of was able to do it a lot in like lunch times and like in between times at my day job, sitting in an office, kind of doing boring office work. So like my partner like never basically saw me do homework. Like I could have just not told her and a master's degree would have showed up one day. So I love the experience. I found like I like technology. I thrive in there. I love the structure. It was like one class at a time, really intense for 6 weeks, then on to the next one with like a cohort. So I really love the experience, but I did miss out on like being on campus and the camaraderie. Like it was different than that. It was very much just educational with a purpose in mind.
Right.
I was like a super overachiever, like master's student for sure. But I really enjoyed that. And I think that like virtual experience actually prepared me really well for like just what careers look like today and how much stuff is done electronically and like navigating like all the spaces you need to. And like that really prepared me well to kind of move into the more modern era of education.
Absolutely. So you really went from this shift of corporate world right and pivoted right into public service. And we got to hear a little bit about what caused that pivot, but can you expand a little bit about what continued to inspire you to continue pursuing this venue for you?
Yeah, I just needed, even if I kind of liked the job or there was good opportunities for promotion or making great money, right? I was like, I've been promoted a bunch and I was working at the corporate office and like corporate finance in this bank. And like, I could have just stayed there and made probably great money, but it was just like, how on earth am I supposed to work? Because I still have like, I'm 35. I still have like 30 years of working left. Like when I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, I was like, how am I going to work for 40 years and I'm not motivated to show up every day? Like if you don't have a mission that is like motivating me to show up every day and making me excited to show up every day, like what am I doing here? And like, the thought of like working with students and helping change lives is just made it so easy to walk away from just these great jobs that help pay the bills, great people. Like I helped develop certain skills, but I just was not like just out of my mind thrilled to go to work every day like I was once I started working in Trio. So I think it was just this mission-based mantra of like, you might not make as much, but it's so going to be worth it.
That's awesome. So can you talk to us about your work in education? What have you enjoyed and what were some challenges?
I think I've started with what I enjoyed. It's just, it feels great to like change lives every day and motivate them. And it keeps you young and active and like,
absolutely.
Like, it's just such a thrilling experience. If you have the mindset for it, you're skilled with it, you have the patience for it. Like, it's just so rewarding. Even with like, there's a lot of heartbreak that comes with it too, or students that don't quite make it or tough circumstances fall on them. But like, literally, it just takes like one conversation can like literally change the trajectory of people's life. Like there are people in all of our own journeys. Like I have those people, I don't even remember their names, but I can picture their face of like that person who just had one conversation with me when I was in high school that opened my mind to what else is possible. Like that's all I get to do all day. So even if you don't always think that you change somebody's life, like there are just knowing the potential impact you can make was so enjoyable. But what comes with that, the challenge is that you need to bring your best self, because all it takes is like one grumpy day, one lazy interaction, one distracted conversation with the student, and they are totally turned off from you. And like just knowing that you need to be present and give your best to every single student is so immensely draining emotionally and physically that really was something I hadn't quite considered in working directly with students before I got into it.
Can you talk to us a little bit about, so you serve currently as the executive director for Oregon's Trio Association. How did that happen for you? Can you talk to us about what that is and what you do?
Yeah, I'm going to do this as distinctly as possible because it's
go for it.
I love doing the Trio work. I eventually was able to move full time. It was awesome, better support my family. Once I started going to like regional associations, like once I saw the community of Trio outside the singular job I had, I was so siloed and just serving my students, working with my boss and my peers. We're just doing that work. And then I went to my first like conference and I was just like, what is this Kool-Aid and where do I get some? Like there's so much energy. I'm like, look at the hundreds of other people that literally do what I do. I thought I was like the only one. Because when I was pre-college, I didn't get to spend a lot of time with my peers who were just in different schools.
Right.
And it was just like such an incredible experience. So I loved it so much. And same thing as my college. I'm like, how do I get involved? So the treasurer was stepping out of the role in our state association. It was all volunteer led, the Oregon Trio Association, just volunteers from all the different Trio programs in Oregon. And I was like, I have like accounting background, a finance background. Like I literally worked in banks. Like I could be a treasurer. Like totally. I've been a treasurer for other nonprofits, like on a volunteer basis. I could do this. Right. And everyone, normally the treasurer is the job nobody wants to do. And they were like, really, sucker? Like, here you go. So that got me involved. And then we just started like really firing on all cylinders. And then we got this opportunity, the state of Oregon, as a response to actually the George Floyd incident. Our governor was like, we want to invest in underrepresented populations through educational equity. And somebody within her office knew, they're like, let's find some community-based organizations to give money to. They picked 5 community-based organizations, and our nonprofit, Oregon Trio Association, was one of those. And they said, we want to give you $1 million over the 2-year biennium. We're used to having like a $40,000 a year state budget. That's enough to like have our board meet twice and then do like a state conference and a student events. Right. Like we're not used to, and all of a sudden it was like $1 million. What on earth are we going to do with that? So they're like, well, Matt, you're the treasurer. How are we going to spend this? And like, let's come up with ideas. So the whole rest of the board had like 3 or 4 ideas what to do with the money. And I had 36. And they're like, okay. And one of my ideas is like, you should hire someone to make all this stuff their full-time job. Because our response is always like, when we do this voluntarily, we love the work we do in state associations or regions, but it's not your job. Right. Like, you give as much as you can, but you got a family, you got a real job to do. You have students of your own to look out after. Like, we should hire someone that this is their full-time job.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Are you going to do it? And I was like, you tell me I can write my own job out of thin air? Absolutely. This is amazing. This is everything I wanted. I get to kind of be a CEO of my own small company. It was everything all the skill sets I've been building towards, because you need to run. I don't have an HR department. I don't have a finance department. I don't have like a business office. Like, I have to do every single thing, but like, I've kind of been like, I feel like training myself up to kind of do these different aspects. And I know my trio stuff, and I built relationships, being involved in the board, and kind of understand the logistics of that, and, Robert's Rules of Order, all that stuff. So it kind of led to just creating a job out of thin air with these state funds. And the job is basically kind of what I spoke to, is everyone's so siloed. Running their program, running a trio program is enough work. But we're always told, like, well, you should just talk to your like legislative reps all the time, or go out in your community and get donations and gift cards, or partner with the local businesses or foundations. And you say that to all these directors, and they're like, cool, thanks. I got APR to do. I need to hire my whole new staff again. Like, I don't have time to do any of that. And I could be like, that's what we do. We are the connective thread that finds additional resources, opportunities, and connects it to our programs. Because even though we're essentially a brand new startup in the job I was creating, I can go into any office and go, hey, we have 47 trio programs spread in every corner of our state that serve over 10,000 low-income first-gen students. Would you like to help them? Right? I can go to the Portland Trailblazers. We brought them up. Hey, do you want to help these students? And they go, yeah. Like, do you guys want to get on our free ticket list? Yes, I do.
That is amazing.
Free tickets I could donate to students who lived in the Portland metro area, so they could go to a game that they normally could never afford, or just a million different ways. Grants to provide free laptops to students who can't really afford their own technology.
That is amazing.
A big part. I know we had said $500,000 a year. That's what we have to spend. I don't make anywhere close to that. Like, most of the money we get, we kind of created these different initiatives. So the main one was like, we're going to hire someone, but we kind of had these 3 initial branches. At first. The first was like, grow trio programs, because what we found is we think these are the best college access programs out there. But like, what about those community colleges that don't know they exist, or high schools that could use an upper bound or talent search, but like, they don't have an institution close by? How do we get programs in those high schools? Because you're only your institution is motivated to keep its own trio grant. Who's doing the work to expand trio programs to people who don't know that? Right. That's now what I get to do. So luckily, awesome. I started right during the upper bound competition, and I just invested a ton of money, time, and effort in providing as much technical assistance training, working with community partners.
That is awesome.
So we only had 13 continuing programs that were rewriting. We submitted a total of 60 applications.
Wow.
And we ended up getting 9 brand new programs. So just in 1 year, we basically had a return. We serve 1,000 new students, 9 new trio grants. That's $2.5 million annually that's coming into Oregon. That wasn't before as a result of this investment. So that makes me look great going to our politicians and being like, you invested in us. We've literally already like had an entire return on investment that is just in perpetuity. Right. And it's only probably going to improve and get better if we keep doing this work. So that's like our main mission, is we think trio's awesome. Let's do as many as possible, but also like support the programs that exist. So my job is to be like a support person. Like, I know every single director, if they ever have a question, I don't necessarily have to have the answer, but I build relationships with all the amazing COE people, or my NAOP, my regional people, or just resources that I find. I can connect them and get them kind of the right answers they need, or pay money out of our funds to provide additional professional development, or go down and do some training with staff to do some onboarding with new staff. Or if there's a new director, I will like schedule a Zoom call and kind of onboard them in the larger like trio structure, and make them feel like they're a part of this Oregon trio family. So that's just awesome. being like really building a community and making you feel connected. And then we're able to spend, a lot of the job is just spending down all the state money. So we invested in sending low-income students abroad. So we sent 11 high school students to Cape Town, South Africa last summer. This summer, we have 18 students going to Morocco, Spain, Ireland.
That's amazing.
All of it free. Tuition's free, flights are free. We even paid for passports. We sent a bunch of college students to like the Amazon and just all these amazing, everything just totally paid for out of the state fund. So that was a cool initiative. And then we also created a scholarship fund that we called the Last Mile Scholarship. So anybody that works in McNair SSS, you have those students who like, they're so close. They're one term away, one class away from graduating, but they've run out of Pell Grant eligibility, or they can't borrow any more loans. They just run out of money. They have medical bills, vehicle expenses, just life happens, and they are about to just drop out and not finish because of just money, where we wanted to make a pool of funds that was able to create like almost no requirements whatsoever other than within 45 credits of graduating. That's like pretty much the only thing, and an approval from your TRIO program. And we just said, look, are you close to funding and just in dire circumstances, apply for the scholarship. We see you. Here's a bunch of money. Like, don't quit yet. Go finish your degree.
Wow. That's amazing.
So far, we've awarded 69 students like $230,000 over the last 2 years.
Wow.
And so far, 68 of those 69 have either graduated or currently still enrolled on track to graduate. And these are all students that were like maybe pulling the plug. So that has been probably the most rewarding aspect of what we've done, is just these people that just nothing has ever gone their way to finally have some good luck happen and be able to like finish and go and transform their lives. So
amazing.
Yeah, that's like a taste of kind of what it is. It's a lot of stuff, right? I also have to like be the accountant and like do budgets and file taxes for an OTA and like plan our professional development events and our student events and all kinds of stuff. But it's amazing. It's such a creative space, and we're the first state ever to kind of like have a paid person doing this kind of stuff. So it's just a new frontier in the world of TRIO. That's amazing.
So I think that for a lot of TRIO programs, it can be very easy to rely on the self, right? To say, you know what, it's my program. I need to run it the way I think it needs to be run. But I also think that many TRIO programs that start or have been here for a while don't realize that there are a number of resources to help them elevate their game, right? There are state and regional organizations, are a treasure trove of resources. In what ways can a state organization like TRIO Oregon help new or experienced TRIO programs? And you've kind of given us the answer already, but and what other ways can they help?
Yeah, it's just you are cultivating a really active, supportive group where it's you're a family. I know we're all kind of competing in grants, but like when we had grant writing time, our group share all their grants. We like facilitate spaces where like you can have cohorts where you read everybody's grant to get ideas and support them. And it's just like a family environment because we care more about the overarching mission of TRIO, of serving these students, providing these opportunities. It's not so much about like job security.
Right.
And it helps because when you've been doing this for a while, it's really easy to just like rinse and repeat, or like you think you know it all. And it's nice to be challenged or to be engaged with these communities, because even as a director, like you can feel kind of isolated sometimes because nobody in your institutions knows what the heck TRIO is. And like you're constantly kind of off on your own and nobody understands you. And like you're dealing with all kind of BS, or like you just want to pay your staff more. But you can't because of like HR equity policies. And you're like, God, this is killing me. And like having those spaces and other people to talk to that have similar experiences. And also like, especially for new programs, to immediately be plugged in and like connected with a couple mentors who like, I just have relationships with every single director. So like I can pair you with the people who are like most closely aligned and not even experienced. Like sometimes I will pair someone who just started 9 months ago, because it's like, well, they know what it's like to have just started, right? And they've been really awesome and engaged. And they like, even though they still are not even a year in, like they would be a good resource because you two can kind of figure it out together, right? Like it helps so much in longevity, because the programs I see struggle the most are the ones that have turnover or have long vacancies.
Oh my gosh,
finding ways to make you like, I loved the job when I was doing the TRIO advising, but like you could see why it would get stale, and like engaging with regions and states like this, it just keeps it fresh and exciting. And then when you go to these conferences and events, you're just surrounded by your family and friends. It's not like a work conference. Like it's such a cool environment. And having a really well-organized state organization just creates such a good resource. Or like this year when the IPRs came out, like we were able to immediately just have like emergency calls where like all 36 directors were on a call, just sitting there hashing it out together, just figuring it out on the fly.
That's amazing.
in unison and as a group, right? Be able to just connect with one another. So just providing support, because you just don't want to feel isolated in doing this work, because it can feel like that sometimes, because we're our own federal grant within a nonprofit or an institution or a service district, right? Like, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a wonderful segue to the next question is, why is it so easy for a TRIO program to feel alone or isolated in a sea of resources?
Yeah, because just running the grant is hard. And like, especially in a modern, if you're one of those that struggles in recruiting, like the job is the students, particularly if you're at the advising level and not at like a director or admin. So like any moment you're not with students often feels like, maybe it's like wasted, or shouldn't I be talking with students? And at times it can feel isolated. Like you're doing really important work, but you're focused on your students, their needs, your program, your objectives.
Right.
And it's really easy to get blinders on and not realize the other opportunities are out there. And you kind of understand why, because it always feels like more work than it is. But that's why if you can plug into good regional and state opportunities, it can kind of take some of that work off and provide opportunities. But you do have to like make time to engage in those. And that can still be hard to do that.
Absolutely. Thinking ahead, what is your goal and vision for TRIO Oregon?
I think this is potentially like the next frontier in TRIO. Like we've been around for 50 years at the federal level. I don't, they may chip away at it here and there in rough years. Hopefully that doesn't happen this year with like the budget crunch and stuff. But like we are pretty established. We're not going anywhere. COE is like a monstrosity of incredible advocacy. They do such a good job at the federal level. And I think they even realize it. It's like they've been around for 40 years, right? Like we've got the federal thing down. And now it's like, where else can we branch into? And the states contribute literally nothing to any of these programs. They just benefit from it. So you don't want to, you need to do it in a way that is carefully crafted, because you don't want the federal government to be like, let's just block grant these. This is what we've kind of wanted to do sometimes for a while. Let the states deal with it. So you don't want to provide duplicate services, but how can we be additive? How is it that a state can be additive and provide more opportunities and more resources to our students in a way that's worth their investment? And like, what is the kind of work we can do? So my goal and vision is that I think this is going to be here for a while and might be the next frontier, where in a perfect world, like when we go to policy seminar, COE is unbelievable, but really they're just trying to like organize each state so they can do really good advocacy and, take that central voice of what they bring in their vision and their amazing leadership, and then communicate that locally in these grassroots ways. If every state could have an equivalent of an executive director, like that would be unbelievable to have that kind of like organization and grassroots connections, and not only at the federal level, but like starting meeting with your state policymakers and like influence policy, not even if it's necessarily getting more money for TRIO or TRIO programs, but like be on important committees, be in the room that's writing policy that impact our students, and actually try to like at the end of the day, what are you doing to try to make your organization irrelevant? Right. If the work you're doing isn't trying to eradicate the issue that we exist to solve, like what is it you're ultimately doing? So don't get so caught up in self-preservation of the work of Oregon Trail Association or even TRIO as a whole. Like, how can we just make more equitable education opportunities, period? So I hope that the vision and goal of Oregon TRIO associations, that this is not going anywhere soon. We are like a legitimate nonprofit organization that functions within this TRIO model, that, we're not kind of adjacent, I don't get any federal TRIO funds. We're kind of separate from it, but through community support, through state support, through the advocacy and support of your, quote unquote membership, the programs within your state. Because you can be like, nothing against COE, but like they don't have time to have conversations with every single program director. That's thousands of grants. That's they just cannot do it. But I can, because Oregon's not that big, right? So like it just provides a level of support that is a niche I think is greatly needed elsewhere. And just even in advocating for TRIO programs, like when we go to policy seminar, like instead of forcing your new president every year to organize that whole thing and have that chaos, like it's me in my role they always talk about like really cultivate and build relationships with these people, with their staffers, with people in state too, not just like the once a year policy seminar. It's so easy to do that when my full-time job is doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you
I can rally, and it's really easy to rally all the troops, right? Because they'll check my emails. I'm really picky about how often and when I send emails, but they will check my email. So if I need them to send letters of support, I can take even COE's letter and like even put a more customized touch on it, right? Like it's really easy to respond as a whole state and just like pounce on an issue or on, funding requests for appropriations. Like it's such a useful tool. That's like why all the state associations even exist in the first place. Like it started with the regions, and they're like, well, this is helpful, but really we need people in each state. So the COE and the regions push for the states. I think this is the ultimate goal. Like, we can talk about, is it somewhat going to make maybe the regional association somewhat irrelevant? Like not necessarily, but I think the ultimate goal for true advocacy is like really strong state leadership, because you can take care of your own business. You don't need COE to hold your hand. They help provide guidance. They provide kind of that structure, that singular voice that is truly essential. But like we can do a lot of the busy work so they don't have to.
Absolutely. And Matt, since you already kind of answered the question that I was about to ask, I'm going to skip over to this next question. What do you like most about your role as the executive director?
I love that I get to do everything. I don't know, like I talked about, it's kind of that finance job and creativity. Like I have to do tax filing and accounting. I have to do HR stuff. I have to write policies and procedures and put out minutes for our board meetings. I have to do event planning. I have to do scholarship stuff. I have to build our website and do technology. Like you just kind of have to do everything, which is exciting and challenging to me every single day. But it's all in these overarching mission of Trio, which is like it just feels so good to show up to work every day. And because I like had my roots in Oregon, and it's all these people around me and my bosses now, right? Like my board, they're the ones who like elevated me into treasurer and elevated me into this role. And like they're so supportive and encouraging, and I just love them all to death. Like it is honestly like such an honor to show up and like grind away every single day to do this work and support them and be really creative and innovative in like how we go about doing that. So I'm just so excited to see how it just keeps evolving.
With the bigger regional associations and with the Council for Opportunity and Education, what roles and responsibilities do you have there?
So with the regional association at NAP, there's a non-voting role. That's the tech and communications chair. I'm pretty tech savvy, so I kind of and it's nice to have the connection in the region, in part because there's some duplication and providing support that happens at the state and region level. And I want to make sure that like there's still kind of value, like there's a good relationship between our region and our state, because our region doesn't have a full-time person, right? Like I can do way more than our region can as a state association,
right?
Just for that fact, right? Like we literally have more money and we have like staff, which is something they don't have. But I enjoy being on in like the tech and communication side, just to like support them, develop the website, help with. I'm also been the conference chair for our like annual conference last year, and I'm doing it again this year. So just building out that community, supporting people. I'm hoping to kind of step a little back more and try to cultivate like developing new leaders. Like I've had the chance to step into that role and kind of be involved in I just love doing the work. I'm one of these people, like I don't need any of the credit. Most people don't say that. They love getting credit. I do like when people compliment me, but really I just want you to allow me to do the work. That's what excites me most. And in this role, it's just one of those where like it's a lot of kind of busy work on the tech side of things and like developing, the websites or restructuring stuff, or just being in the room and being on that board and be able to go to like those retreats. It's just fun to be in the room and do the work. And we've worked hard to like do a monthly professional development series, and we kind of started our own podcast called What's Your Why? And it's designed to just kind of profile some of the really more well-known faces you'll see often at the front of the room and just kind of demystify them to be like, guess what? They're just you. They're just somebody that works at a Trio program that's been doing this long enough to where they now have to sit at the front of the room and give speeches, but like they're just a normal person. So we like to kind of profile them to kind of make them more approachable at conferences.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's my work at the region. Then COE, they've been awesome. They brought me in just as like I'm not like an official board member. I'm a special committee member on state initiatives, because like it's a passion project of theirs. And Jen Rudolph, who's just absolutely amazing. She's the VP of, I think, state initiatives. I think and that may not be her official title, but like they're really seriously looking into like how to develop states and grow their leadership and do work in like statewide policy. So when this popped up kind of out of the blue, they were like, well, we might as well bring Matt in here because obviously they're kind of on the forefront of this. So Jen's been amazing. Celi's been amazing to kind of help cultivate some of the strategy and direction and ideas and support around some of the work I do. And then just to be a part of that committee has been helpful. And then I'm also on the International Education Committee because a big part of our funding was going towards creating these international education opportunities. They brought me in because I just kind of have had some experience in there. And there's some similarities in kind of how we're trying to create opportunities and some of the work COE's trying to do and advertising that to the masses, right? So those have been the two roles I've been involved in with COE's board.
Awesome. If a TRIO program in Oregon or even a state association outside of Oregon wanted to contact you, how would they do that?
Yeah, so it sucks to spell it all out, but it's simple enough. It's just executive director at OregonTrio.org. I am one of these insane people that have like no unread emails and like a tiny inbox. So like you email me, I will see it. I will get back to you quickly. If you go to our website, it's just OregonTrio.org. Pretty much my email's on there a few times, and we do have a contact page. Same thing, like that is not going to some vacant email nobody checks. Like you email me, I will respond. So pretty much any contact you hit up on that website, I will find you. But I hopefully, and even the phone numbers on there should just go to my like business cell phone that I carry with me pretty much 24/7. So I would welcome anybody to reach out. I love talking with other states or folks about just the opportunities or potential, like what have we learned and like, you know, how should they go about maybe expanding their state association or engaging with their state policy folks, right? Like definitely, you know, COE is an awesome resource too, but I'm always more than willing to connect, and I would love to see this grow too beyond just Oregon.
That's awesome. Thinking ahead, what do you see yourself doing 5 to 10 years from now?
Oh man, I guess one thing is there's not really anywhere this job could go. This is kind of, there's no super executive director. So like, I would love it if I was still doing this. If I'm not doing this, I hope I'm working for another nonprofit, maybe in a really cool role that is, you know, an upgrade on this, right? Some fancy job where I just get to impact students' lives, because I love just the work we do, helping students and doing work in nonprofit. Like really, I work in nonprofit management. I don't really work in TRIO world anymore. It's just that our entire world of nonprofit, like our entire nonprofit is slapped on top of the TRIO motto. So I kind of dabble in both, but really my world is more in nonprofit management. And it is just fun, exciting. The funding is even more horrifying than TRIO though, because it's like a year by year, every 2 year thing instead of every 5 years. Don't love that as much, but yeah, I would love to still be doing this role.
Right on. Are there any mentors, teachers, or advisors you would like to recognize on this podcast?
Oh man.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I think so. I guess I'm going to shout out two. The first is when I was in college, his name is Frank Y. Rostick. He was my finance professor. And I actually remember I really didn't like him as a professor the first time I had him, because he didn't seem like he was taking things very seriously.
Okay.
He was just having so much fun. He had all this like Bluetooth stuff. He was making up his own terms for like amortization. It's something you do with loans, but he would just call it hammering. And he would just be like, hammer, you got to hammer. And he would draw hammers on like the screen with his Wacom pad.
Yeah.
He was just silly. And I kind of was like annoyed by it, because I'm like, I'm serious. I'm trying to like be serious. And then you realize like the stuff he was teaching you is what you actually need to thrive in the environment beyond just what's in the book. And he was the guy, you know, I was in classes with like 2-3 people, and he's just sitting between you. So I got so much intimate time with him, and really made a fun experience. And I think it's part of the reason he loved Excel, and not just like using it, but making it look really pretty. So I got so good at Excel because he demanded it. He would grade you. He'd give you an F if you just gave him an ugly spreadsheet, even if all the answers are right. Like he needed it to look good in the eye. Wow. And that has been like maybe the most valuable thing. It's just like not just using spreadsheets, but how do you make it readable to like somebody who hates spreadsheets? So shout out to Frank. And then the other one is Philip Dirks. He's probably like he's like the OG Oregon Trio Association. He's the reason our state association was able to be successful and exist for as long as it was. He was the director out of Portland State University, Upper Bound and Talent Search. And I just saw him as just like, he just had ambitions and wanted to get creative and just saw no limits to what things could be. And he kind of came out, he was retiring right around the time we got the state funding. And I was kind of holding out hope to just replace him and be like the director of Portland State for the pre-colleges and just be the next Phillip. And then this came about, and he was one of the ones, along with Jeff Gardner, who's director out of MESD in Oregon and is the current NAP president. The two of them are good buds, and they were just like, Matt, we should just make you the executive director. Like, I love those two of those guys, but Phillip really was just like, he is the face of Oregon Trio. He was one of the trio trainers on kind of the priority circuit. Like, he's just such a highly respected, such an amazing person. We try to bring him back to as many conferences even as we can to have him present on stuff. We just love him here. So he really an inspirational guy in terms of like thinking bigger than just like working under a trio grant.
Right on. What is something that you would like to share with trio professionals, like some advice or even some words of encouragement?
I think it's important, build community within trio. So like most of the job is your students, is your program. But if you really want to love your job and if you really want to get good at it, like make efforts to do the professional development, even if they're like priority trainings. Like, I know a lot of people like to go to those and not, I mean, priorities are different. They track your attendance, but they go to the other professional development conference at your state or region, and then they just like go on tourist mode and that kind of stuff, which is like, when you've been going for 10 years and you have all your friends and you go with your other trio friends, like whatever, you're an adult, you can do what you want. But like, go to the sessions, meet people, put yourself out there. Don't just sit with your staff, sit with new people, because like you're going to get the most out of the experience, the bigger your web of community gets. And it helps your students, it helps your program, it helps you get more resources. When you have something that's scary or maybe is troublesome with your program, you have people to reach out to that will take time out of their day to like help you and make sure you're squared away and in compliance and those sort of things. And it just makes the job more fun. And then when you have those opportunities to go to these professional development opportunities, it just feels like family. And really trio can be just such an amazing familial space.
It can be, yeah.
That just holds you and makes you not want to leave, even if there are some better money opportunities. So like embrace that, even if you are an introvert, like I very much am, but like just show up, put yourself out there, because we all are doing this work because we absolutely love it. Like there's so many amazing people in the world of trio. Like take some time to just meet as many as you can.
Absolutely. What advice do you have for trio students at the pre-college or college level?
I think I'm trying to I have all these like basically memorized speeches from when I used to talk to them all the time. So I'm trying to unearth the one that makes the most sense. Ultimately, you need to like understand what your strengths are and like maximize those. I spent a lot of time thinking I had to like hone all my weaknesses, or I would do jobs and just would ignore the fact that like my core strengths, and it like helps doing stuff like strength finders or Enneagram, right? There's a million things out there, but identify what are my real strengths. Not that you can't be more diversified than that, but if you find work, if you find careers, if you find schooling, if you find things that really embrace those parts of you, you're going to be good at it. You're going to love it. You're going to enjoy it. So like, and know that you can be a leader regardless of what those strengths are. Sometimes only certain kinds of people tend to be in front of the room, and they are the outgoing, the like positive, there's just a model of the person you can picture at the front of the room, and not everybody has that in them. But like understand every kind of strength that's out there has equal value, and we need a balance of all those. And if you don't step up as someone who maybe is not the typical model of who you see speaking in like front of a conference or something, like you are so desperately needed, because the odds are there's probably like a room full of those people and they are clueless to all the things that they are like missing. So as you're going through school, as you're looking for jobs, just like really understand yourself and what your strengths are, and just like work to maximize those and do those to the best that you can. Like, don't compare yourself to other people. Know what you bring to the table and just do that to the best of your abilities.
Absolutely. What is one word you would use to describe yourself?
See, I've already said it's probably competitive,
It's
but
competitive?
I think adaptable. I'm going to
Adaptable.
a second.
Adaptable. Okay.
Yes.
I like that one. What is something that you're currently watching, reading, or listening to?
I am always watching all the Marvel stuff.
Love
Honestly,
it.
more though, so then I
Yes.
can listen to all the podcasts. I follow the Ringerverse. It's part of like the Ringer
Wow.
website.
I'm gonna have to add
It's
that
just
to my
a
list.
Podcast. I started listening to it years and years ago, and it was under like Grantland. It was called Binge Mode was the initial podcast, and then one of the posts kind of went off elsewhere. But I love that sense of community around like a shared experience. One of the things that was hard in today's age and age, there's so much content everywhere. Like, I'd be in a group of 30 high school students and you're like, what's the song of the summer? What's everyone's favorite TV show? And there'd be 30 answers every time. You're like, gosh, none of you, not that you don't have anything in common, but like back when I was growing up, there just was like, there weren't that many options out there. So
Right.
it's
No, I
easier to
mean,
build a connection.
it was like radio, whatever radio was playing, that was popular.
Exactly. So I really appreciate podcasts because it allows you to find your like niche community and feel like you can listen along with that stuff. So yeah, shout out to the Ringerverse. It's just a fun crew that just talks. They take it really serious, deep dive, but also like they have not too seriously and they have a good time doing it. So I love that.
I'm gonna have to look it up. Matt, I know we've been talking for almost 2 hours. I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. It's been a true pleasure to speak with you about Trio, your journey, getting to know you, and we definitely need to have you on again.
Well, thank you, Juan. Pleasure being on here, and I really appreciate what you do with this podcast and profiling professionals and alumni from all over the nation in this incredible Trio world.
Thank you so much. So we have a tradition on the Let's Talk Trio podcast where we have the guests sign off. Do you care to do the honors?
Absolutely. This is Matt Bisek, and I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Trio Association. We are on the cutting edge, people of the future of Trio. It's state associations. We're out there. We're coming. Let's do this together. I'm excited to help anybody out there who wants to learn more. And it's been a pleasure to be here today. Trio works, and it always will.
Are you a participant, alum, or staff of a Trio program? Do you want your program highlighted? You or your program could be featured in an upcoming episode of Let's Talk Trio. Get a hold of us by going to our Facebook page or Instagram and send us a direct message. Search for Let's Talk Trio. We want to get your story to the public.
That was our guest, Matt Bisek from the Trio Oregon Association. Thank you, Matt, for being on the podcast and for sharing your Trio journey. Remember, if you would like to be on the Let's Talk Trio podcast or know a staff, advocate, participant, or alumni, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. A huge thanks to our sponsors, Angelica Villalpando, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Angelica Valdez, Rosario Riley, Felicia Rivera, TrioJoblist.com, Jaded Electronics, NOSOTROS Education Center, and Student Access. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can be a sponsor of Let's Talk Trio podcast in one of three ways. Become a monthly patron on Patreon. Our base level starts at $1 a month. Become a corporate sponsor. Email us for sponsorship packages. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast PayPal account. Our handle is @Let'sTalkTrio. One more time, that handle is @Let'sTalkTrio. I'd like to take a moment to thank our honorary members of Let's Talk Trio podcast, Roderick Chambers, Tony Ho, Scott Kendall, and Susan Cramp. The Let's Talk Trio podcast team is John Russell, audio engineer, music producer and composer, and post-production editor. Amelia Castañeda, script supervisor, marketing manager, social media manager, and producer. Juan Rivas, executive producer and host. This episode was recorded Monday, June 12th, 2023. As a reminder, folks, always use your right to vote. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.